Thank you and welcome. A very good afternoon to all of you. To begin with, today we are talking about scaling electric commercial vehicles. We have already. I would like to start with a simple observation. The commercial vehicle industry has never ever adopted any technology, any system into its vehicles unless it is economically viable to the operator. This is one question that we have all asked on several occasions, be it the updated safety norms, be it the newer emission norms, be it the upcoming ADAS norms. How does that help the operator? How does it impact the cost of ownership, the TCO? And the same question now we see is being asked of the electric commercial vehicles today. We do see we have moved from say the pilot stage or proof of concept stage to now deploying electric vehicles. We have seen the electric three wheelers and the small commercial vehicles see garner a very high adoption. We see last mile delivery as one of the key application for the small commercial vehicles. But going forward, we also see the electric buses being deployed in twin city applications, intra-city and intercity, with a great push from the government with the new PME Drive initiative they have. Also, what went wrong in the first edition where the payments were not made. Now they have come up with promises to the operators that they will get paid on time. So there is a push from government as well. The next question that we have to answer now is how do we scale the larger electric vehicles? What is required? Is it a government push? Is it the vehicle dynamics? Is it the software? Is it the battery? What is going to drive or the scale and the scale of adoption that we are expecting? The government is expecting, the industry is expecting. And with that, I would also like to start this discussion with one question: what needs to happen for electric commercial vehicles to move from a promising growth story to a mainstream reality? And that's where we can start the discussion. So I would like to hear from the panel what is the push that we need initially, and then we can go on to the different themes that we have planned for today's discussion. So if we can start with the highest scaling, highest adopting electric three wheelers, and then we can move to the panel.
Hi, Nachiketan. Good afternoon to all the panelists. Yeah, so electric vehicles in India is no longer just a proof of concept. There are multiple segments where it's working very, very well. I represent a segment, the three wheeler, which apparently right now has one of the highest penetrations, particularly on the L5 category. If I talk about, we are close to about 30% penetration. And in the last 1 year, if you look at the calendar year, the number of vehicles that have been actually accepted into the system is far more than what we have done cumulatively in the previous 2 years, despite the tapering of the incentives. So the world has moved on from demand generation incentives or subsidies more to market-led forces, right? There is a clear case where the TCO, particularly in the three-wheeler segment, works. Because you have operating economics coming in. There is a total cost of ownership when we talk about the vehicle acquisition that has been made much more relatable to the ICE vehicles because of the lowering of the battery costs. In terms of the uptime, the vehicle has progressed a lot. The technology has progressed a lot. You can actually guarantee more than 90%, 95% uptimes in use cases. Number three, in terms of the residual value, that is also coming up. So overall, we see that the industry, the people, and particularly in certain applications, the vehicle has started picking up quite well. It is something that can probably be replicated with whatever customization is required in the other segments to kind of go up. So yes, to come to it, the EV is going to scale up. The technology is already there. Now it just comes down to how well and on what applications it is best suited for the adoptions and the transitions to start taking place.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gogi. Can we have Dr. Narang?
First of all, really great to be here. Obviously, CVF's doing some great work in this space over the years. Look, I think, one of the most important things right now is, for me in this country is energy independence. 3 months of $100 oil and we've been asked to work from home, don't travel, don't go foreign travel. I don't think that's going to make India great again. So energy independence is extremely important. How does energy independence become more and more important? Is we have to. My personal belief is EVs and alternate fuel vehicles. 80 to 85% of oil is imported. So I think commercial vehicles, whether it's 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, I think specifically the 1-ton trucks, are going to become very, very much in play. I think we've got to be able to make sure. See, the clear part right now is EVs will only work if there's TCO. In India, that is the only way. If you're going to go to a logistic player, you're going to go to a retail market. If you want to want EVs to work, you've got to make sure that the total cost ownership works. On the 2 and the 3-wheelers, absolutely, I think it's starting to work even more. And I think with what's happened just now, see, in my view, I was a fund manager for 30 years in commodities. I mean, we're going to see a much, much higher price level. So I think 2, 3, and up to the 1-ton truck, the TCO model is absolutely going to work. For the bigger trucks, look, and I also think if we're going to be dependent on the government, I think that policy doesn't work because, we have, I know we had FAME, we had PMI Drive, we had PMI Drive, all of those things were okay, but I think the government has got other agendas to work on than be able to giving handouts. So I think all of us in this game have to make sure that we are able to provide that total cost ownership model, for 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers, trucks. I think if we are able to price it, which I think you are going to be able to do this in this environment, you're going to be able to. And I think using technology, using, artificial intelligence, this is going to be able to be possible. Now, how many trucks in this country are working with ADAS? I spent a lot of time in the front lines. I mean, I would say minimal, right? The truck drivers are not using ADAS in this country. Now, how do you convince logistic players, people who are running fleets, that this will add value? If the downtime is, prevented, if there's a better range, if there's a better, quality of service, then only. And honestly, everything will come down to total cost ownership. And only when that works, whether it's Ashok Leyland or whether it's Electra with the buses, whether it's Piaggio with 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers, whether it's us with 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers, we all have to work on that. And I'll tell you, to work on energy independence, that is to me the biggest agenda of our country. If we don't fix that, I know when we got into this game, we were all talking about the environment. But environment में किसी को घंटा फर्क नहीं पड़ता अगर TCO मॉडल नहीं होगा. मैं बहुत रियलिस्टिक बात बोल रहा हूँ. हर कस्टमर, हर logistic player only says, whether it is Amazon, Flipkart, Zomato, they want cheaper cost. And in EV, they want even a cheaper cost over, ICE, right? And so I think that is achievable. There are serious demands coming in. I see long-term energy prices higher. There is no solution to this war. It's going to take a lot longer. So we, as industry participants, it is going to be a public-private partnership, but I think it's going to be led by public, less and private more. And that's the only way. And at the end of the day, private companies have to make money to make this going for scale.
Hello, everyone. So I would like to address the question a little bit differently. So as a vehicle engineer, when we build engineer, we think we reach the maturity level when there is a owner-operator ready to take a bet on the vehicle and believe that that vehicle will pay back in so many years. It will feed him, his family. But when it comes to the EV, that maturity has not reached that level. The reason is it is not visible. The TCO we talk all about, but that visibility of the profitability is not reached. No matter how many times we give the calculation, like with all the financial engineering models, the individual operator or owner will not take a bet. Some certain level of maturity has reached in the case of LCV and SCV segment, but the market size is relatively small. And if you, when we look at or when we discuss with the individual operators, they say that I have a certain way of life, and for me it meets. But when we see a diverse people, without the subsidy that the government is providing, without the energy cost subsidy, it is very difficult for them to meet. So in the case of a heavy commercial vehicle, it is even more a challenge. So the government took a very interesting step of like pooling the demand. So the bus tender and the PM E-Drive, like focusing on a certain targeted vehicle, that really helped. But if you think that it is sufficient enough to take to the mass adoption, I think it will take some time, because we need to show the reliability and profitability. Only then that EV, that electrification will pick up. And till then, government support is required. Without that, it will be a bit difficult. That is my point.
I want to add for the buses. We are from Switch Mobility. We are operating on electric buses. So for bus segment, if you see the penetration, it will look like very minimal, 5%. The industry is TIV is 1.2 lakh. Last year, the EV bus sale is 5,000. So it is less than 5%. But if you see the segment wise, the city bus segment, it is already 25%. Because there is a drive from the government, FAME, then PME drive, PME bus seva. So it has reached a respectable figure of 25%. But the other segment, the private segment, which is intercity, staff bus or school bus, the penetration is next to nil. The government is doing a good job. Now they are talking about the interest subvention scheme for 50,000 buses. So if that is the scheme they are rolling out for the private operators, once that is rolled out, the demand from the private segment will also grow. And once people see the early success, the adoption will rise. For example, one of our panelists is Prasanna Travels. So they have started the intercity buses between Bombay and Pune. So after trying out 10 buses, so now they're thinking of adding the fleet, more buses. Because EV buses, when you run more, you earn more. The operation efficiency is higher. So any buses which are running more than 200 kilometers per day, it makes sense to divert to EV. But the challenge is on the staff bus, because the running is less than 150 kilometer. And school bus is the further challenge, because running is only 50 kilometers per day. So the industry has to make a suitable product for this segment. So there is a product engineering is required. We have to give optimized battery. The vehicle price has to come down so that this segment also starts moving towards EV.
So thank you everyone. Good afternoon. So if we see 10 years before, so the discussion was whether the EV will be success in India or not, whether it can be used in the peak temperature of 50 degree in the Rajasthan and the Himalayas like Himachal, Uttarakhand, Jammu, Kashmir. So that barrier has gone now. So from Electra side, if I say, so we are selling the buses in Rajasthan as well as HRTC to Himachal also, and those are running successfully. So now it is the time when we we are discussing now the scaling up. So POC is already done. So scaling, how it will be done, rightly said by most of the panelists, is one is the TCO. So we need to put the talk about the cost of ownership. We already know that operational cost of the EVs, it is much lesser than compared to the ICE. TCO also, and then the awareness. So right now also, though the engineers has proven that we have the better thermal management system, we have all the artificial intelligence, route optimization, everything is there, but still many of the fleet owners, that awareness has to be transferred to the operators. Second thing is the infrastructures. Though we have the product, we have all the technologies available, but to run the vehicle, we need the charging infrastructure. We need the electricity generation, the infrastructure, solars, windmills, all these are parallel. We should push to get this. And I'm very sure, if we see the roll cameras, suddenly they have there was discussions whether the digital camera will be success or not. At the time of CRT TV, whether the LED or LCD will come or not because of the huge cost difference. But if very short period of time, the technology turn around the mindset also. So EV also means I feel we are in the stage very soon. People will see if I buy it, so whether after 5 years I will be able to sell this vehicle or not. So we are in the right track. Maybe down the year 5 years, this is scaling. We will not be discussing the scaling of the EV also. There will be some other challenge we might be discussing in this forum. Thank you.
Very true, very true. So, Santosh, before we come to you, already we are seeing a lot of recurring things. One is specifically TCO is one, software is one, battery capacity is one, vehicle design and dynamics is one. So, and we have already established. My next question was going to be that have we reached the inflection point where EVs are going to be the reality? But from this discussion of 2-3 minutes, we have already established that we are already way beyond the point of inflection and we are way beyond point of return, where now we can say very confidently that electric commercial vehicles will not stall like some of the previous maybe other technologies, like we tried LNG, CNG. That is not very well received. But we believe that electric commercial vehicles may be limited to some applications for now. Going to the future, they can scale to the other applications as the costs and the TCOs improve. So my question now is that we spoke very definitively about the TCO and how TCO plays a role. But do we believe that the TCO is something that is being thrown around very casually these days? Because we understand that the electric buses or any electric vehicle has a better TCO per kilometer operating cost as compared to a diesel or ICE vehicle, which would be 9 kilometers for a diesel vis-a-vis 1 or 2 kilometers for an electric. But the biggest challenge to even buy an EV, and Gogi and we were speaking about this before the conversation started, is the acquisition cost. And how do you see, maybe from an OEM's perspective or from a regulatory perspective, how do we come over this challenge and how do we make EVs accessible? Because in the previous panel discussion, somebody threw a statistic that 80% of our commercial vehicle owners are Chalak Malak, that is your owner drivers. So how do we make? Because once we do that is where the scale is truly going to happen. How far is it and what needs to be done?
Should I take?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So, thank you. So, I believe that India had already proven that electrification of the vehicle is done. It's only now remain is the electrification of the highways, where we get the infrastructure. Because if we put the M3 and N3 category of the vehicles on road on a highway, we need a good infra where we have a support from megawatt chargers or swiping stations, and it should be made available throughout the highways where the fleets are operating. So, and about the TCOs, I'm hearing. So, TCO will be successful only till we prove that fleets are profitable, because the CV business is purely for the profit. So, we need to prove that the EV vehicles, when they're running in a fleet, they're profitable. And how we can do that? It's creating an ecosystem. As you said, there are the individual owners, and how we connect those individual owners to the fleet, and they provide the ecosystem support, like a charging infra, maintenance, service, preventive maintenance. And these technologies can be cascaded to those end users.
I agree with him, actually. Just to add on to the point, I think it's gone beyond TCO. The TCO we understand in certain applications it works, but that's putting it very, very simply. TCO works when you know how much the vehicle is going to run, what is going to be the charging cost. You have advantage if you're doing a home charging or a closed loop charging rather than using the expensive public charging stations. It also works when you know the uptime and you know you have a rate contract where you're assured of the revenue coming in to kind of offset your cost. That is the only place where the TCO right now works. The other parts we're getting over there, but you're somewhere near the borders. Somewhere places it's working, some places it's not working. The bigger challenge for the scaling of the EVs right now beyond the technology is the entire infrastructure and the ecosystem that comes to it, particularly coming from the three-wheeler segment. We have already established the TCO. We see the largest penetration. The biggest hurdle we see in further scaling up from a 30% penetration to a 40, 50, 60 is, for example, the infrastructure for charging. The three-wheeler owner does not have a home where he can go do a home charging, right? So Do we have park and pay spaces? Certain places, yes, but the cost becomes prohibitive. What do we do in that case? How does the infrastructure for charging, how does the grid readiness, how does the land and regulatory approval for putting up more affordable charging spaces? What are the energy economics coming from the government or the local municipal side? That is going to determine the charging and the uptime for the vehicle. Number two, in terms of the service and the uptime readiness, the local service technicians cannot service a broken down EV, right? There are a lot of gadgets that you need, and these people don't have the skill. How does the roadside mechanic start working on the EVs to ensure the uptime or a repair for a broken down EV? Number three, in terms of finance, now we still see a lot of hurdles coming from financing of the EVs, mainly because of risk associated with the battery and also very, very weak residual cycles, right? Nobody's come to the second cycle of the battery right now. It's still a very, very native industry here, very nascent. So more and more EVs coming into the second life will bring up the resale valuation, which is currently on paper, but the NBFCs, the financiers will start working on it. They will start receiving the value. They'll be able to plug it into their financial models and start giving out the funds more easily. As of now, three-wheelers works on a 22 to 25% rate of interest, which is phenomenally high. So the affordability factor, it's not just on the early acquisition cost, but the total life cycle value of the vehicle. So that will become another hurdle that we need to cross for the vehicles to scale up. So it's a total ecosystem that needs to come into the place for the different segments, whether it's three-wheeler, LCVs, school buses, heavy commercial vehicles, HCVs. I think we spoke about the freight corridor. Do we have a charging corridor? Are we kind of like now limited to high frequency usage routes only for the EVs? When do we go for a trans-city or an intercity kind of a route? That will depend on the infrastructure, the charging facility coming up on that route. So the ecosystem and the infrastructure as a whole has to come up for this penetration to go up and the scale that we're talking about to be realized.
Absolutely. I think before Sukanta sir, you start, I actually wanted to share an example or an anecdote that I experienced while interacting with a few bus fleet operators in the north. So this was last year. I was involved in a study. So we were talking about deployment of electric buses, especially between Delhi and Chandigarh. So one key aspect that came out of that discussion was that the customer who is going to travel on the bus, he is not ready to go in an electric bus because he's not very sure if the bus will reach there. And usually what these operators are currently doing is that they are telling the bus, the traveler that ye electric bus hai, and if it will stop for 1 hour to charge. The bus anyways stops for your bio brakes. It is just they are explicitly telling that it will stop for charging, and that is something that the customer is or the traveler is not willing to accept as of now. So that is one customer psyche I wanted to highlight before you put forth your points.
See, the industry has evolved. The battery capacity, which is to be in a typical on a bus, is around 200 kilowatt hour. Nowadays, moved to 420 kilowatt, 423 plus kilowatt hour. And also, players are working to take it to 600 kilowatt hour. So, current what is the available technology, which is 400 kilowatt hour plus, the vehicle can cover 300 kilometers on a single charge. And if you add another 30 minutes of bio brake and refreshment brake, so it can cover around 400 kilometers on a single charge and a limited opportunity charging. So the operator has to select the routes. First, we don't have to take routes which are 600 kilometer and putting the customer, the commuters to wait for 1 hour. Start with the low-lying fruits, distance which are 150 kilometer, 200 kilometer, 300 kilometer or 400 kilometer. Let those routes get electrified first, and within 1 or 2 years down the line, all OEMs will have a battery capacity 600 kilowatt hour plus, which can cover 500 kilometers long distance. So still the market is huge enough for this short distance also, like Bombay, Pune, Bhopal, Indore,
Twin city
Chennai,
applications.
Bangalore, twin cities can be covered.
Very true, very true. And I also wanted to hear from Dr. Narang about his thoughts on the point that we have thrown out.
Look, I think obviously technology has changed. Battery capacity has changed. Another thing, which is one of the questions that our friend from Piaggio was saying, is that charging infra, right? but then there is, in certain cities, there is battery swapping. Battery swapping prevents in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Chennai. A lot of things are happening. Look, from my experience, Rome wasn't built in one day, but in India, we want everything in 1 minute. थोड़ा time लगता है, बन रहा है. Look at the number of buses. Look at the number of green plates that are coming on. Yes, you're absolutely right. More than anything, charging infra needs to be worked on, and charging infra in the right places, right? As we say, location, location, location. We're also seeing, newer, if you see, this range anxiety that you talked about, the range anxiety seems to be, much more controlled. I mean, let's talk about intercity and then talk about intracity, right? So I think what you're seeing, and as the network grows, more and more, and national highways are being built, so proper charging infra is going to be able to set up. I think, I keep saying, buses, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and one-ton trucks. The bigger trucks will take time, anything above 3, 5, 10, 40. Yes, a cement manufacturer or a copper producer or an aluminum factory can have that in an enclosed environment, but it will take time. But if we can catch, India's primarily buses, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and one-ton trucks. If you take all of that, I think we've covered a large majority. And obviously, passenger vehicles are also coming. One of the points that I really want to say is, our friend, from Electra was talking about it. Mahesh is a good friend of mine. I have a highest respect for that. I'll tell you that clearly a secondary market, afterlife, long-term viability, resale value of electric vehicle market needs to be set, because not only for customers, but for financing. Financiers need to know 4 years or 5 years down the road, what am I going to be able to get my residual value? So, but I do think technology, I think battery capacity, range anxiety, and for me in the next 5 years, I don't think, the discussion is, EVs or alternate fuels. The question is, how big is the scale? And I'll tell you, if prices stay, which I think in the next few years between $80 to $100 a barrel, if it's up to Mr. President, Mr. from the US, it'll always be that price. And I think you'll see more and more adoption. You're going to see energy independence and our government really put more effort on it. I think you are seeing significant future bus, acquisition in electric. You've got, and you see more and more 2 and 3 wheelers. I think right now the demand is so strong, it's just providing the supply. And I think technology will bring prices down. You are seeing much, much more, local production. You're seeing costs go down. And as scale goes on, costs will come down. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Maybe from a buses perspective, another anecdote I would like to add before we hear from Electra's perspective is that I was again talking to some of the fleet operators here in Pune from an infrastructure standpoint, that he was a small business, small operator who had around 3 or 4 buses. So I asked him, where do you usually park your buses? So he said that me and a few of my co-operators who operate on the same route, we have actually gone ahead and bought a piece of land outside Pune just to park our buses. So even in some of the other conferences, we have heard that India's electrification is stopping right at the depot's gate because we don't have the infrastructure. That is one challenge. What are your thoughts about that from an Electra's perspective? Because you have already deployed, but again, the deployment for Switch and Electra or the electric buses as a whole is more from a fleet perspective. What happens when it goes to a smaller operator? What happens when a smaller operator is interested?
So you are right. For the small operators' point of view, right now the infrastructure is a big challenge for the charging infrastructure and the scale of economy. For example, if you see the 3-wheeler, 2-wheeler, a large penetration is done in the e-commerce, last mile and then quick commerce, where they know how much they have to run the vehicle in a day, what is the payload, what is the capability. So till now there are two things. One is the infrastructure. Second is designing a vehicle for a particular application. So because in the bus segment right now there are huge orders and order book with all the OEMs, whoever is making the buses is from the government side. So most of the buses, those are designed as per the city tenders. So there are two things. One is the government needs to provide the infrastructure for the small players. Second thing is, based on these applications, like for a school bus application or for a staff bus application, we need to develop the dedicated vehicles for them, maybe which can run only 50 kilometer or 100 kilometers. So the cost of the vehicle and the total cost of ownership can be bring down to the level where they can adapt these vehicles, and that can change the scenario.
The scale that we are talking about and tailoring vehicles as per an application. In a long term, when we talk about complete electrification, or at least that is the aim. So, how would it then be manageable for OEMs to have multiple models, multiple variants, multiple range?
So actually, right, what I feel right now, the issue is not whether the OEM can design the vehicle or give the vehicle or not. Right now, there is a issue, or you can say the backend support. So till now, also many of the component, maybe directly or indirectly, we are dependent on the imports. So until unless this key components like power electronics and cells, battery technologies, it is made available in India, this scaling will be a concern. So if I have options to make means one vehicle for the 1000 number, or I need to make 10 vehicle for the 1000 numbers. So definitely, as a businessman, we will choose to develop one vehicle so that we can.
We have a multi application with one model or one platform.
Yeah, so
for
it is
multi-application.
that can also be done, but at the same time, not from the OEM point of view, from the tier 1, tier 2 point of view also, they should be. Means I should have the VCU, I should have the battery, I should have all the components so that I can make a modular platform, and with the same platform I can fulfill the requirement of different segments.
Right. So carrying on with the theme of having multiple platforms, multiple application
Scalable
segments,
platform.
scalable platforms, I would like to throw this question to Santosh. What are the challenges in actually achieving this? Because as opposed to a passenger vehicle, the commercial vehicles, they do tend to generate a lot of heat. They do have longer operating cycles, and they are also exposed to rugged environments more often than the passenger vehicles. So what are the challenges in developing a platform which can be applicable to maybe multiple segments? Because as of now, we have established that the electric vehicle the adoption is very limited to certain use cases, and we are also, the OEMs are also driving towards maybe developing solutions that are very segment specific. So how do we move from a segment specific to a more of a holistic approach, and what are the challenges in that?
So you rightly take up that currently even in India we are seeing the rise in the ambient temperatures, and it directly impacts to the performance. And particularly I feel that batteries fitted in the vehicle should be used for driving it rather than cooling the systems. So it's probably mostly it's an issue of the integration, how we integrate for that ambient conditions. And India is totally divided with different geographies and different ambient conditions. So I believe that we have to create the or address the issues case by case, where we are facing what kind of issues. Maybe northern part is facing a temperature issues and the thermals, and definitely these thermals are taking down the batteries. And apart from that, we are also facing weight penalties because of low density packs. How fast we move to the higher density packs, adopt it. And on the tech side, I believe there is a softness. Like I represent the controls and electronics, so I believe that there is a softness now playing a key roles by making a fleet profitable. So I take one definition, like we usually talk about SDVs, but I would like to quote it in different way. Software defined fleets. The vehicles are already running with the softwares. If you make a fleet which is controlled, monitored for the ambient conditions, for the preventive maintenance, for the alarms, for the triggers, and then by using the software capability, if we can make the fleet more profitable, the scaling will ramp up.
So, do you believe that software is going to batteries is one thing, operating cost is one thing, but do you think that software will become the next differentiating factor, or
Definitely,
would it
definitely.
be a combination? Obviously it will be a combination of both, but how big role does the software play?
Because I want to add, when we talking about the electric vehicles, we are handling more than 20 controllers, and we know there is a tremendous software electronics coming up. Traditional vehicles, we already proven from last 50 100 years we are running these vehicles, we know how to run the vehicles, but it's all about the integration of the new electronics which is coming, which is still evolving. The battery is evolving, the semiconductors are evolving, the power controllers are evolving, everything is evolving. So how better we integrate and how better we use those information of the vehicles to leverage it for the fleet benefit. So I believe the software will play the key role. Even the AIs which are coming, the data, everyone, we are collecting a number of huge TVs of data we are collecting. Are we using those data?
So, at JSW, are you using big data, and are you trying to build or improve the vehicles using data? What kind of data is being used? How is it, or maybe in general, how should the industry use this data to maybe scale the software part of it?
So I believe the timing of the JSW is very accurate. As we are seeing the AI evolving, we can take that benefits. So I believe, yes, we will use those infra.
You are using it. And continuing the discussion on this battery part, I would like to hear from you, Siva sir. What are the different challenges? He mentioned that battery density is one thing. We always keep hearing about the debate of LFP versus NMC. One is much more rare earth metal rich. The afterlife or the end of life for those batteries is also profitable to recycle. When you recycle NMC, the black mass that you are generating, it brings in more value than recycling the LFP batteries. But when we say we need energy density, LFP is the thing that comes to mind. Or so I want to hear from you, what is the evolution expected, or what is how the batteries should evolve to maybe support the larger load applications, because we have already heard from Dr. Narang that up to 1 ton is something that is going to scale, and it is going to be the big thing. But how do we scale the remaining from say 2 ton to 56, 55 tons or even more? How do we do that?
To address this question, I would like to go to the previous question that was asked about. See, when it comes to EV, it is customized based on the mission profile. So there is a need for like a 100 kilowatt hour pack. For the same size of bus, there is another need for like 150 kilowatt hour, then 200 kilowatt hour. It is a very challenging task because from the vehicle building perspective, it is easy. But when it comes to make a battery pack, having the same kind of voltage architecture, but to meet these different kinds of energy nodes is a very challenging one. So we have to see if we there are like 5 or 6 cell manufacturers trying to put cell manufacturing plant. We don't know what kind of cells or what cell format they are going to choose. And if they all build a different cell and then come up with a battery pack of different size, it will be very difficult to accommodate and create a consistent market for those packs in the vehicle segment. It is a big challenge. If you look at China, how they evolved, they picked 1 or 2 cell format initially and they created a mass market. And based on that, they built up the entire ecosystem. Of course, they didn't prevent other cell manufacturers from exploring a new cell concept, but they created a mass market for a large number of companies. So there is a cell manufacturer, there is a pack manufacturer, there is a vehicle manufacturer. There is a consistent alignment on the boundaries that is established. So a group of companies or multiple people can compete within that dimension and they can improvise and improve the technology and that. That helped China to grow the battery technology in a very, very short period of time. But in our case, the market size is relatively small. But we are exploring different types of cells and different packs that is actually causing a lot of challenge. So I would recommend we pick one or two cell format or based on the kilowatt hour, we can say 3 or 4 cell format and then go ahead with it. Now with NMC and LFP, if that is the question, initially India started with NMC because we followed the European structure. But we realize for the tropical climate, LFP seems to be advantageous, but it's, we have to evolve. So there are other LMFP and all is being developed, but based on the chemistry information, it is not required for us. For us, LFP is suitable because when we go for a higher voltage, it degrades faster in a tropical climate. So even with LFP, is the pack technology that China has built is sufficient enough? We have to evolve along with time. So it will take some time to even answer that question.
Right. So I would like to throw this question to the OEMs on the dais. What Shiva sir said, that standardizing the battery, how feasible is that? What level of collaboration is required at an OEM level or multiple OEMs level? Please go ahead.
Look, I think it's a great idea, but it's not possible. We've worked on this. I mean, I love it. I mean, in a traditional, in a collegial atmosphere, this is work. If you were to ask Switch, Electra, JSW, Piaggio, us, Bajaj Mahindra, nahi hoga. I mean, you maybe you're like Martin Luther King. You have a dream. I'm sure that's a dream, but I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, we can talk about it, but we couldn't even get an agreement on battery swapping to have home. Okay, so we've been working on this for 7-8 years. Everybody says, this was not possible. So yes, you can give me solution. You can give me a lot of ideas, but somebody will say I'm buying cheaper. I like this technology. It's going to be very difficult. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm sure happy to hear your views.
So because of this reason, we are not able to build a consistent market large enough to create our own cell infrastructure, our own pack infrastructure. We are not able to use the volume as advantage. So that is why we need to combine together to meet your energy security as a primary objective that electrification will meet. In that case, we need to consolidate.
No, look, you're right. I mean, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you, but for the last 8-9 years, we've been working. I know our time is up, I think, but okay. So what I wanted to say is that, in my view, honestly, it's not going to be possible. I wish you're right, but I don't know. I'm happy to hear other people.
Yeah, I just have one thing on this. I think it's not a question of force fitting any particular solution or a pack size or anything. It'll happen on its own. To borrow from what Mr. Uday said earlier, Rome was not built in a day. We've given ICE vehicles more than half a century to develop and evolve into what they are right now. Let's accept it. Electric vehicles in their current form using advanced chemistry cells in India, the vehicles, we've not even covered a decade. Major mainstream vehicles and the technology has come in only after COVID. We have not even covered a decade over here. Over time, I think the market forces will themselves play out and give a stable platform across the industries, across the segments, across the application. We just have to be patient. We just, running behind something which will eventually play out in the space. You cannot have multiple configurations available. There will be some sort of a standardization. Until then, yes, it's going to take time. Let's not be impatient about it.
It looks some standardization may come out. If you see the chargers, the industry started with a different type of chargers, but now it has been commonized CCS2. Similarly, if you see the mobiles, all iPhone have different mobile chargers, different mobile has different chargers. But now the government has taken a decision, a common charger. So similarly, some standard will come, but the flexibility is required for the OEMs to package the vehicle with different capacity and to have a modularity, because some vehicle will ask for 50 kilowatts, some will be 100, some will be 500. So that modularity has to be there, so that packaging the right product for the right customer is there.
Very true, very true. So since we are running short of time, I would like to now end the round of discussion with one key question. So the question is, which combination of technology maturity, policy support and market readiness will determine whether electric vehicles will become a mainstream in India or remain a niche solution?
So I will take about the synergy you said. I think swap could be the one option we should check because where the swap could be the solution where the synergy could be brought on. And about the technologies, definitely. First, for the policy, I'm saying the electrification of the highways. It's purely a policy driven. Somebody need to drive that and create the ecosystem. And the ecosystem should be made available to the even a single vehicle owner. Because right now we are talking about the fleets, but the buses are proven only because they're running in the fleets. And for the long range N3 category of the vehicles, it needs ecosystem support.
Ecosystem support and also regulatory support to regulatory push to certain extent.
Like I said, the swaps. If some synergy is brought where the swap ecosystem is shared, maybe that could be one solution.
So, to make it scalable, I think everybody in the ecosystem should be profitable, whether it is a OEM, it is a customer. Charging means the person who has put the charger, the swappable infrastructure who has put the swapping station. So if I give you example, I was in Piaggio somewhere in 2019 when we launched this swappable battery in Tri-City. So swappable battery, if you see that time, the running cost of the swappable battery and the CNG vehicle was cheaper. So that was not profitable even for the swapping station owner, not for the end user. So unless we talk about the profitability of everyone in the ecosystem, so it will be very difficult to say. But taking your point whether it will be a mainstream or not, so definitely I will see in not in the far, maybe in 3-4 years we'll see electric vehicle will come in the mainstream. Very well.
Look, from my point of view, we've all got to this. This is and I keep coming to this, energy independence. And this is it's sab kuch acha hai, and I keep coming back. In 3 months, we have got our country, we're talking about making the 3rd largest economy. We did a pretty quick drop, right? We've got to be able to work. And see, I don't think, from my experience, it's going to be government-led. If you're going to be dependent on the government, any of your businesses, this is not the United States, this is not Korea, Japan, this is India. We have to be creative. Yes, the government will help you. I think, for me, scale will bring cheaper battery prices, vehicle prices, charging infra. This is the whole ecosystem. It is not OEM, battery, motors. It has to be the ecosystem. Look at what China has achieved. Those guys are 50 years ahead of where we are because they build ecosystems. Unless we build alliances and we build it here. You're absolutely right. When the Cell PLI came in, उसमें राजेश एक्सपोर्ट्स का भी नाम था. उसको सेल का C spell करने नहीं आता है, right? So we have to have, I'm sorry, I'm talking about reality. How many cell manufacturers, real cell manufacturers have come over the last 10 years? Zero. And if something has come, maybe we'll come with Goshen or will. So what I'm talking about is we need ecosystem building. We need to put India first. We need to align forces together, and we've got to be able to get to energy independence. Otherwise, I'll be honest with you, we're just going to, and I'll be honest, biryani startups and gig worker economy is not going to put us anywhere. And I think that is what is important. And what is most important is making sure we build scale with ecosystem. And charging and batteries and OEMs are all going to be there. We've got to be energy independent. If we're not energy independent, then work from home काफी लंबा चलेगा.
I'm gonna answer to that one because we align that biryani economy is not the right path for India's progress. We align on that, but there is a disagreement. China built the ecosystem. There, the government played a significant role. It is not a free market. Yes, they gave option to the startups, but also they gave support to the big guys. That is one thing. Second, what are we doing right now whether it is a right path. That is what I am going to question. You support the free market, like all give OEMs or all the different players to have their own, their own choice. That is where I am disagreeing. Because when we have this free market, there are a lot of competition and some are like a cannibalistic competition. There is no group of or a consortium formation. Everyone is competing against everyone. That is actually not conducive for the nation building. We think this commercial vehicle as a one entity, but it is part of a larger jigsaw puzzle. It is like a heart that is pumping out all the required thing for the different parts of the body and make the different parts of the body working and alive. So that is the very important part that commercial vehicle is playing. And here, when we are saying that we want to build an ecosystem, cell manufacturing is also an ecosystem. But all these cell manufacturing companies don't have a fixed target. You know what I detest every day? When 10 years ago, I like reading news saying that today there is an innovation in the lithium-ion battery. But today, if I read that, I'm afraid because my boss will ask, are we going in the right direction? Should I change the plant? Should I change the technology? Should we even invest in that? That is the kind of question. So this cell manufacturing is like a soft problem, or even the whole electrification is like a soft problem. There is no fixed target. So soft problem cannot be addressed just by talking alone. The government should play a role providing a hard target. This is the cell we need to work. So cell manufacturers target that one. So battery pack manufacturer target that one. So that kind of fixed target, future-oriented target, so that the whole ecosystem can be built. Give the roadmap for the 5 years or 10 years. That is what Chinese did. 2008, they started the electric EV ecosystem that way. And that gave the support for the next 10 years. And 2016, they were able to build a viable EV ecosystem. There were 500 companies started. Now there may be 65 companies surviving. But they built the ecosystem and they are reaping the benefit. We are not doing that because we have not given a fixed target. We need to give a fixed target to our business. We need, the previous someone said that uncertainty is very dangerous for the business. Here, each cell dimension is uncertain. If there is a 1 millimeter change, it will not fit into another pack and that will not fit into a different vehicle. The whole volume of the target volume goes down. So that kind of uncertainty should not be there. So the government has to take a role and play like a big brother role and give boundaries where different ecosystem player can compete and build a viable system. That is my point.
Thanks, Siva, for guiding us on the cell part. Okay, coming from the how the industry will grow, from the bus perspective, we need the private operators. If you see the traditional private operators, they are sitting on the fence only. They are watching how the EV game is playing around in the market by government and some few EV players, pure EV players who has entered into the market. But the traditional players are still at the sitting on the fence. So we have to develop the ecosystem to bring into the mainstream of the EV. So the OEMs, the charging companies, the financiers, they have to come together to develop the ecosystem, and government can play as a catalyst for this.
Financing part of it, which is one of the largest hurdle towards the maximum transition of electric three-wheelers to electrification. So let's say easier lending, financing, and a better, let's say, a first loss guarantees kind of a scheme policy intervention will definitely help build up more confidence on the three-wheeler financing and lead to a higher electrification. For the buses, I think I'm not an expert, but I would still assume an advanced chemistry cell, freight corridors, the demand push incentives that they're still giving, which is quite substantial, I think about 40 to 50 lakhs per vehicle, still helps out in taking up the initial load of acquiring the asset. Thirdly, policy decisions such as mandating certain percentage of the fleet to be electrified will help the fence sitter, as he said, to get into that game, get over that initial hesitation and go over the mass adoption of electrified vehicles. So I think for each segment, all the players have to come in with different proportions, but eventually it is something which is a question of when rather than will.
Thank you for those insights.
We can maybe do one question from the audience.
Maybe take some questions from the audience.
This one.
Hi, my name is Manish, and we run commercial vehicles into long run. So whatever you talked about are the challenges of the commercial vehicles to run on long run basis. When we talk about the ecosystem, I think one of the important point what we have been missing out is the TCO word. Generally, how you can meet TCO is capacity utilization of the fleet. What we can see is a lot of our clients are underutilizing our fleets, the capacity of the running capacity of the fleets. Now, what are your says on getting them into this ecosystem, and we can increase the capacity utilization of the fleets and get to a better TCO of the vehicles?
See, when it comes to EV, it is not the right thing to keep the vehicle idle, because keeping the vehicle idle degrades the battery. But as long as you are using, you are making value out of the battery. So unlike the other common ICE vehicle, there even if you keep it for some time, the degradation, it will degrade, but the rate of degradation is much higher in the EV segment. So all the business models that requires round-the-clock operation or maximum utilization of the EV will benefit from the electrification. But if the vehicle is idle for a long period, like 20 hours or 16 hours idle, or a very less utilization over the entire year, then the benefit will be much less. But still, the operator may go for the electrification because of other reasons, like to meet the ESG goals or some other reasons they may go. Other than that, on a purely TCO basis, if there is a business model that requires around-the-clock operation, full utilization of the vehicle, then electrification works. It's purely from the battery perspective. So in this case only, the battery swap plays a significant role. I really like the battery swap, and for that all the commercial vehicle players have to come together, and there should be a common standard. Then it will be really helpful.
I have a question regarding charging on the go. Have the manufacturers thought about putting a solar panel on top of the commercial vehicles? The batteries operate on a specific DC link, and the solar generation also happens on the same DC voltage link. The integration could be smooth, and it could reduce the batteries, it could increase the life. Any thoughts on that? Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's something that should be worked on. I think that not just for India, but we working in Africa. I mean, I think this is a very, very important part. More needs to be done on this, and I think that I second your opinion. And I think it's a matter of time. I think it's going to be coming. The sooner, the better. One thing I just want to say, and we work with. I mean, Piaggio's worked with battery swapping. We work with battery swapping for a long time. We're working with Honda also. The infrastructure cost is quite high. Right? So it's not an easy, and I'll be honest, I'll give you an example, and I'll close that with that. We were looking at Africa, and I'll give you a story of Uganda, and there's many stories of India, so I don't want to say India, but I'd rather just put it across the continent. हम लोगों ने किसी ने बैटरी स्वैपिंग स्टेशंस लगाए in scale. कई लोगों ने बहुत सारे बैटरियां चोरी करके दूसरा नकली battery swapping station. So, there are so many problems and in India we went through where we worked with Indofast, and I'm sure you worked with Indofast, where initially the batteries were all getting stolen. They were, because at the end of the road, there are people involved, technologies involved. So, and it's a very, very expensive, swap batteries for buses. For cars, it's also good, but battery as a service can be included. But to answer your question, really, honestly, I think solar is something that needs to be done more, and I think it will lead to higher range and it'll lead to lower cost. And, sir, मेरी एक ही request है, हम सब लोगों को इसमें काम करना पड़ेगा. ये conferences से निकल के बाहर जाके भूल के आइस गाड़ी चलाना वो भी ठीक नहीं है. We have to put our hand in the pocket. हमारी country में दूसरे की सोचते हैं, अपना करना कम है. And मोदी जी इस country को clean नहीं करेंगे. हमें खुद clean करना पड़ेगा. That's my only say on that.
Hi, I'm Jay Ganesh. I have a question for you, sir. So you said that the cell sizes are not standardized, or that is one of the reasons that we are not able to modularize the battery packs. So why China did not lead this kind of a modularization? Because they have created a lot of battery packs and cell sizes.
No, they do have standardized. In fact, whatever the cells we are using are the standardized formats of their cells, their packs. There is a pack called C pack that is like 1 meter long, 640 millimeter width, and the cell size is 230 ampere hour. And that is the cell that is being mostly used in India. In many buses and large trucks and all, that is being used. Whereas in the smaller LC vehicle, there is a 100 ampere hour cell that is being used. But depending on the kilowatt hour requirement, they may keep it one string or two string. So China has done this, and we are actually being a follower. So that is where I want to have our own system. Every day when we read the news, we are scared because some new technology Chinese will bring and we are not able to solve, we may not be able to compete. That is a big problem. We are not able to set the technology narrative. We need to break that cycle. We need to set, this is our target, we will work on it irrespective of any other technology for next 10 years. Otherwise, look at Windows 95, Windows 98, we keep on buying the new Windows. But do you really need Windows XP or whatever the Windows 13 right now? But can we still work with Windows 95? All the banking softwares are all working with the COBOL and the old system. So we can make the system work, but we are being forced to change the operating system because we are not able to set the narrative. So we need to break that cycle if we want to have our own system. So that's my point.
So is it possible to make the battery packs also modular like chargers? Like charger modules are added like 30 kilowatt or 60 kilowatt.
So as the technology evolved, what the Chinese have learned, and from that what we have learned, when we modularize too much, there are a lot of inefficiencies we are building up. That is actually reducing the energy density of the pack on the vehicle level. So it is better we need to have a certain common on the cell level, but on the pack level, it shall be a little bit more flexible as per the vehicle.
One last.
Okay, we have one last audience question.
Hi, I'm from JSW. So here we talk a lot about regulatory support, developing ecosystem, uniformity across the batteries. There is a concept introduced by Government Ministry of Road Transport, Battery Aadhaar. So what are your thoughts about it? Will it be helpful and will it be successful in a long run? You just talked about storing batteries, replacing batteries, copying. So not just stolen, but standardization, traceability, and over a period of year, will this model help all the OEMs and across the nation?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. First of all, JSW is doing great work. In the space, and great to see them come in. MG's done a great job in this space. Look, I think Battery Aadhaar is good. I think it needs to be. I think if we can do it, it'll help. Tracking battery. It'll also prevent quality. It'll be able to give responsibility. I think OEMs. And some of these guys that are bringing two-wheelers and some of these other products from China and just selling it out there, and then there's a fire, it gives all of us a bad name, right? And I think Battery Aadhaar is a good, or a battery passport, or whatever you want to call it, is a very, very good. The enforcement, the follow-up, the systems need to be developed. I think what we can't do is just do a half-assed job, and then everybody has to be part of that. Everybody. So I think for me, I definitely second that. Anything that gives safety to our vehicles, give battery longer life, give EVs a good name, I'm for that. So I think maybe the rest of the guys can give a quick, but I think it's something that I'm definitely in agreement with.
All right. So with this, we conclude this session. I'll just conclude it quickly. So today's conversation, it makes it very clear that the future of electric commercial vehicles in India will not be determined by just one single breakthrough technology. It is going to be a collaborative effort of all the ecosystem players, and developing a cohesive or a conducive ecosystem for the electric vehicles to ply. It will be determined by how effectively technology, economics, infrastructure, software, manufacturing, and consumer adoption come together at scale. The opportunity is significant, the progress is real, the next challenge is execution. With this, I would like all of us to thank the panelists today, and we conclude this session. Thank you.
Great, great. We request you all to come together for a picture, please.